The Apple iPhone 12 mini, the return of the king, in my opinion. One of the nicest designs that Apple ever came out with. The squared off edges, similar to that of the iPhone 5. This thing is fantastic. 5.4-inch display, fits in the smallest of hands. That's probably my biggest concern with smartphones these days, is that they always tend to be too big. And so as an Android fan, I've always migrated to some of the smaller phones like the Pixel, mostly because of the camera and because of the size too. I hate the sort of huge phones that Samsung produces, among other things, software-wise too. But anyway, aside from that, it's always been hard lately to get a small-ish iPhone as well, especially with good cameras. And so Apple decided to come out with the iPhone 12 mini to sort of meet the needs of the people that want a high-end phone without the high-end size. And so they created this phone for people like me who want something that's a little bit smaller. I mean, I have pretty small hands. And so I like the fact that this phone fits in my hand really, really easily. This is an iPhone 12, meaning it's the latest phone from Apple for 2020, 2021. It is a rather interesting sort of new design. They've kind of kept some of the elements that they have from the iPhone 5. They've replaced the back to now be a glass sort of glossy back on here. You can see that it's very, very fingerprinty, fingerprint magnet on this thing right out of the gate. Two lenses, you have your wide and your standard. They don't have, there's no telephoto included in this. You'd have to go to the Pro for that one. They do have the addition of 5G in the iPhone 12 series, and you have this little 5G port right here that you can see. But the metal case on this, this thing just feels great in your hand. I mean, every time I pick this phone up, I feel like Apple nailed the design. I mean, this thing is phenomenal to hold on to, and just the way the Face ID works and how quickly it is and how fast the phone unlocks and just how sharp the screen is, and just everything about this phone is cool. Very, very smooth, easy to use, quick to open, lightning fast software. The only gripe I would say about this phone that I have is the fact that the camera is just good. It's not great. When you look at this thing compared to, say, a Pixel, for example, it really, really, really kind of has room for improvement. And so, if you're buying this phone, I think that you're buying it for the size more than anything. And that's great because the size is fantastic. And the usability of this phone for people like me that have small hands or just want a smaller phone can't really be rivaled. I mean, it is fantastic to be able to pull this thing out of your pocket and stick it in your pocket really easily and quickly and not have a big, huge phone bulge. And so I think that the need for people for this phone, or the desire for this phone, really comes down to the fact that you want something a little bit smaller. The camera being a little subpar, there's trade-offs for everything, right? So I think for me, I'm going to stick with my Pixel. I just like the Pixel a little bit better. I like the fact that the camera in the Pixel is a little bit better, but the size and the usability of this phone, to me, is the best on the market right now. Other things to talk about: Apple decided in their marketing or in their production to sort of cut costs, and they don't include any chargers with this phone. The only thing in the box that you get is a USB-C to Lightning port, which is also sort of annoying because they can do USB-C, they do it on their Macs, but for some reason we're still getting Lightning in our iPhones. So it's yet another cable that we need to have, which sucks. And the fact that they're not including chargers is kind of BS in my opinion. I mean, I think that Apple is going to produce those chargers anyway, and they're going to just make people buy them as extras instead of including them in their phones. So that's sort of something that can be debated. But the biggest draw I think that most people have to this phone is that it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, you think about it, it's $699 for the base model. The only downside is that base model does come in at 64 gigabytes. It's not a high capacity phone. They do go up to 256 gigs, but that does jump the cost up significantly to about $850. So if you think about it from a budget standpoint, it's still an expensive phone. It's not a cheap phone by any means. $699 for 64 gigs to me seems a little stingy. I think that especially with all the high def videos and 4K videos and live photos and stuff, if you don't have cloud storage, you're gonna use that 64 gigs very, very quickly. Right, and so if you compare the Mini to like a Pixel 4, you look at the size difference, there's a pretty significant difference in size here. And I tend to think that the Pixel was just a tiny, tiny bit too big for my hands. I mean, I like the Pixel and I drop it very rarely. Everything I do is I don't use cases, so I don't have any case advantage, but and phones are kind of slippery these days. But this Pixel is just a little too tall for me to get everywhere. But I mean, seriously, this iPhone mini can get everywhere I need it to get. I can reach everything on the phone screen. It's just great that I can use all the features of the phone with one hand. And the fact that it's square, you really have to feel it to understand what I'm talking about. Like the phone feels right. It just feels quality. It feels good in your hand. It's easy to use. It's light. It's balanced. The only downside is the camera bulge. So like you get that little bit of like kind of off center rockiness to it, But that's okay. I mean, if you're not careful, if you put this thing down, you're going to end up scratching your lenses. So, maybe smart to get some sort of protection for that. But if you get a case for this, it's going to ruin the aesthetic. It's going to ruin the design. It's going to make the phone feel different. And I think that, to me, that's one of the biggest, nicest things about this phone in particular, is that it just feels so good in your hand. One of the other super cool features that I haven't talked about yet is the MagSafe sort of thing they're calling back here. And there's a series of magnets that allow you to not only wirelessly charge the phone, but also stick magnetic accessories to it. And so like this is, for example, this is a car vent holder. And so this will stick right on the phone and hold it attached to the vent, which is super, super cool. The only downside is if you put a case on it, I'm not sure if that will affect it or not, but that's neat that you can use sort of third-party accessories right out of the box that'll attach to the magnet on this thing and be able to work with it without the Apple influence and without spending the Apple dollars. So is there anything about the phone that I don't really like, or my recommendations for you, the consumer? Well, I think the big thing is that even though it's a flashy, fancy new iPhone, iOS still feels the same. It still feels like the same ecosystem. It still feels like it's the same grid of icons. Now you can do widgets in iOS, which is cool. I mean, it is neat. I do like it, but I think that it still kind of feels tired. And not to say that Android is any better in that circumstance, but there's things about Android that I like. I like setting every default app I can. I like the notification preferences in Android. I like the sort of camera system in the Pixel. And I think, to me, it comes down to the usability of the phone. And as much as I love the hardware on this thing, I just can't get away from the fact that Android suits me better. But that's just my own opinion. If you're an iPhone user and you use iPhone every day, this phone, if you want it for the size, is going to be killer. You will absolutely love it. You'll love the MagSafe part of it. You'll love the design quality. You'll love the build. The camera is great. It's going to be a super duper upgrade. 5G is cool if you have it in your neck of the woods. We don't have it yet here where I live. But I think the features that they've packed into this phone, in addition to the build quality and the aesthetic of it, are phenomenal. And I think you'll really enjoy it. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed this review. Don't forget to check out everything else I have on YouTube. Rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.